Arsenio, they got rules. They got rules. Like, he has a rule. The bass player, he got a rule. He got to wax his head every morning. That's a rule. He follows the rules, man. He follows the rules. Oh, these are jokes. Come on.
Oh, these are jokes. Come on.
Much like in the TV show The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Will Smith was from West Philadelphia, born and raised. However, unlike the character that would one day make him a household name, Will Smith was a middle child of 4 kids and never moved to Bel-Air, at least not for fighting and getting in trouble. At the age of 12, a young Will would begin rapping. At one point, his grandmother found one of his notebooks filled with what she considered profanity, explaining to him that truly intelligent people did not have to use words like that to express themselves, and then she advised him to show the world how smart he was. Smith would apparently take this to heart, as much of the music he would eventually release was considered family-friendly and contained little, if any, profanity at all. Smith would later forget entirely the wise words of his grandmother, to his own detriment. But now the year was 1985, and Will had just met Dr. Jazzy Jeff Towns. In need of a hype man, the two formed the hip-hop duo Dr. Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. The new duo would quickly release their first single, Girls Are Nothing But Trouble, a year later in 1986, to commercial success. Catching the attention of Jive Records mogul Russell Simmons, who quickly signed the duo, they would then release their first album on Jive in 1987. The album was another critical and commercial hit for the pair, and it would then earn them 2 Grammys for the singles Parents Just Don't Understand and Summertime. At this point, Will was riding on a wave of wins. He would go on to frivolously spending his money and earnings, and underpaid on his taxes, which would eventually result in a $2.8 million tax debt, through which the IRS took many of Smith's possessions and even garnished his income from his music earnings. This put Will in a tight spot and in a desperate need for money. However, once again, luck would be on the family-friendly MC's side when he got a call from NBC, who, in hopes of capitalizing off the success of the new rap genre and the amount of interest it had been generating, at the time were interested in building a sitcom around him. Being in dire need of money, Will quickly signed the contract with them, and The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was born. In the show, Will plays a fictionalized version of himself, who was sent to live with his more affluent cousins in L.A. after getting into a fight in his native West Philly. Like much of what Smith did during this era, the show was an instant and major success. It was also around this time that Will Smith would have his first marriage. He was married to a woman named Shiri Zampino in 1992, and she became the mother of his firstborn shortly after. Often referred to as the forgotten son, Trey Smith is the one you don't hear about very often, for better or worse. It was around this time that his show was generating massive critical and commercial success that Will Smith then decided to become, quote, the biggest movie star in the world, and began studying the common characteristics of box office successes. His first film role was in the indie film Wherever the Day May Take You, a forgotten film in which he only had a passing role. However, it wasn't until his 2 back-to-back successes, critically with 6 Degrees of Separation and commercially with Bad Boys, that would establish him as a leading man, a role he would occupy for many, many years to come. Crediting his success to the studying of the box office, Smith would make few mistakes during this time. Aside from picking Wild Wild West over The Matrix and the divorce from his first wife, Will was again living the high life. And he would eventually meet his future wife Jada Pinkett when she auditioned for the role of his character's girlfriend on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and he would continue to see box office successes for the next decade or so. He would also father 2 more children with his new wife Jada, the very insane Willow and the equally insane Jaden. It wasn't until the mid to late 2000s that Will would begin to see a bit of a decline. Many would say this began with Men in Black 3, having not acted since starring in 2008's superhero film Hancock, although I personally would say his first major misstep was the movie After Earth, in which he co-starred with insane son Jaden. It is one of the few movies with no redeeming qualities. Between the weird accents and the even stranger themes, Jaden Smith's character's constant whining renders the whole thing unwatchable. Smith would eventually call the film the most painful failure in his career. His next 2 roles, the film's Focus and Concussion, would do well, but it was the next role that would likely overshadow the previous 2. For good or bad, Will Smith starred in David Ayer's Suicide Squad as Deadshot, and despite being one of the movie's few redeeming qualities, many would consider this another crushing blow to Will's once shining film legacy. Smith would then star as the Genie in Guy Ritchie's very strange live-action adaptation of the hit Disney film Aladdin. Besides going down as a bit of meme history, this film was met with mostly lukewarm results, although in his defense, Robin Williams is indeed a tough act to follow. What happened next is what many scholars point to as the catalyst moment for the downfall and current state of Willard Smith. Aside from the infidelity rumors that had been plaguing his marriage for over a decade on, that defining moment would have to be YouTube Rewind 2018, quickly becoming the most disliked video in the history of the site, overtaking the record previously held by Justin Bieber's song Baby for the past 7 years, a rigorous feat to say the least. Now, this happened for a myriad of reasons that I won't go into here. Check it out for yourself if you want to know why it's so universally hated. Following this massive media failure, Will Smith would continue to stumble publicly in his new role as a quote-unquote YouTuber, pretending to have his teeth knocked out on camera by that guy who sung the Han Solo song on the Star Wars dancing game, and shamelessly stealing the subscribers of more successful YouTube accounts. Much of his erratic behavior at this time could likely be attributed to the aforementioned infidelity of his wife and the mounting insanity of his son Jaden. Having left the infidelity on the back burner as rumors of his own extramarital relationships would circulate just as often, it wasn't until a public red carpet appearance of Jada and the singer August Alsina, long rumored to have been in some form of relationship, that sparked countless memes and discussions and rumors that Will and Jada were forced to address it in what would go down in internet history as one of the most unintentionally funny examples of a horrible marriage airing its dirty laundry out for the world to see. Many who saw it described it as Smith looking broken and frustrated, while wife Jada gleefully breaks down her famous entanglement with Alsina and quickly justifies it in her own mind by saying that Will had his own entanglements, which as of now still aren't public or common knowledge like she made her own, likely dealing another critical hit to the manhood of the Fresh Prince. Now, these constant blows to his ego and the growing resentment he held for his soft guy family man image would come to an explosive conclusion at the 2022 Oscars hosted by Chris Rock, culminating in the now famous moment in which Smith screamed obscenities at host Chris Rock for making an extremely tame joke about Jada resembling G.I. Jane due to her alopecia, and eventually stormed on stage and slapped the comedian in one of the most famous displays of crumbling masculinity and ego that has ever been televised. Many were confused and taken aback by the pathetic actions of this obviously broken man, and he was condemned by the masses as being thin-skinned. However, many were quick to point out the fact that he at first laughed and appeared fine with the joke, until we see Jada's reaction, and shortly after this, he began shouting at Rock. Now, many saw this as an example of a weak-willed man desperately trying to get back into the good graces of an unfaithful wife. There were also several insane people defending his actions, and even the Academy at first appeared to be fine with this behavior, as they didn't throw him out for assaulting the host, and instead allowed him to stay and accept his reward, while tearfully apologizing to everyone except for the man he assaulted. It wasn't until the public condemnation of him that the pretentious circle jerk fest known as the Academy of Films would announce a public investigation into the incident. Despite the millions of witnesses rendering the merit of the investigation into a rather moot point, Smith's retroactive apology to Chris Rock appears to have done very little to get him back into the public's good graces, and we can only wonder at how much further this once respected actor will fall. If there's one thing to be gleaned from all of this, it is that if Will Smith or someone at his level can get away with assaulting someone of Chris Rock's level on stage, on live TV, imagine what they can get away with doing to me or you when the camera isn't rolling. Alright, so if you guys liked that video, please like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. There's definitely more coming. See ya.